All right, everyone. Another example on marginal and conditional distributions. So grab the one straight from the textbook. So straight from the headlines. Here we go. We got a table here of information collected from individuals. They were asked if they were in the environmental club and whether or not their familiarity with using a snowmobile. So some people never used it, some people rent, some people own. So that information is collected in the table. We have marginal totals collected on the side. So those are the bold numbers. And the question now says, does the data suggest that there is an association between environmental club membership and snowmobile use among visitors to the park? Give appropriate evidence to support your answer. So we want to see, is there an association between club membership and snowmobile use? So we want to now look at is a conditional distribution. So now we want to think, what should I look at? Should I look at snowmobile use based on, so remember, so let's write that out. So snowmobile based on their club membership? Or do we want to look at club membership based on snowmobile use? So those are our two options, because we can go either horizontal or we can go down the vertical. So is there a relationship between environmental club membership and snowmobile use? So I'm going to base it off of the fact of, if they're in the club, does that influence that they are going to use the snowmobile? So I'm gonna go for the top one here. Okay, so does snowmobile use, is it affected based on the fact that they are a member in the club? So that means I'm going to be going down the vertical, okay, since I'm selecting that one. So now let's look at never used. I'm going to go yes, no. So we're doing conditional distribution here. So in that first one, I would say 445 over the 1221. 445 over 121. Now versus never used. Whoops, I went the other way. So let me fix this. This is the no. So on this side here, we got 212 over, oops, 305. Okay. Now I'm writing it this way. And I'm not punching it yet in the calculator. I'll do that in a second, just so I can see how am I getting those numbers. If I were to just write the decimal, it makes it harder for me later on if I'm coming back to kind of check, well, how did I get that decimal? So always show your setup. I would recommend doing that. Always write what the fraction is and then punch it into your calculator. Don't just straight up write the decimal, because again, when you go back later, you're like, how did I get this number again? What did I divide by what to get these numbers? So just write them out as the fractions. Then I'm going to say, here we have the renter. So renter was 497 out of 1221. And then we got 77 out of the 305. And then finally, owner. We have 279 out of 221. And then finally 16 out of the 305. So in red, I'm going to write the actual percentages next to these. So bear with me here. I'm going to pause for a second as I do these numbers. Okay, so now with the numbers, put in, I see I have the following totals, or not totals, but the following percentages. So now, based on just looking at it from this perspective, this condition, can I say there's an association between club membership and snowmobile use? So I see that if they are in the club, so if I'm looking at the yes, if they're in the club, I have a higher percentage of people that never use a snowmobile. And it becomes less and less till finally there's very few that own it. But if I see that they're not a member of the club, the numbers are a little bit more, I want to say, like evenly distributed. Okay, like the percentages, so I have a 36%, a 40%. Here I got like a 23%. They're kind of, in comparison to this over here, this looks more evenly spread than this group here. So this would be a form of evidence based on the numbers to kind of say, well, based on club membership, it seems to have an influence, because if the club membership didn't matter, then these numbers should be sort of evenly distributed, kind of like these over here, because then the opinion shouldn't matter. The fact that they're in the club seems to imply that there's some sort of influence. So that's what I would say as a way of you giving appropriate evidence to support my answer. So what I just finished saying, I would write that out in comparing the two numbers. All right. Now we could have decided to gone the other way and say, well, club membership based on snowmobile use. So I'm going to pause for a moment here and switch this up to look at it that way and see if I looked at it from that perspective, would that have changed my answer towards the association? All right, so we're going to just take a little time jump here as I go ahead and I erase these and put in the new numbers. All right, so now we can see here after a little time hop that now we have our numbers. I wrote how I got the percentages in blue, but that's how I'm grabbing the numbers. And now, does that affect what our conclusion was? Remember, our conclusion before was we said, yeah, there is some sort of association. Do I see that here with these numbers? Now, again, remember, we are looking at, is club membership influenced by snowmobile use? So I'm looking at it kind of like from this perspective. When we did the first one, we were looking at it from the top-down perspective. So if I look at people that have never used a snowmobile, more onto the no than in the yes, okay? But as we start getting into starting to use the snowmobile to owning the snowmobile, we see there is a more of a difference between they are not a member of the club versus they are a member of the club. So again, when we're doing comparison, it's not just these two numbers to each other, it's also from what we saw before. Does that changing of category, does that changing of variable affect how these numbers appear? Because if we went down to renter and to owner and we still saw this kind of distribution of 67, 68% to 32%, then I would say, no, it's not really making a difference. But the fact is that yeah, as we get into more use of the snowmobile versus a renter and an owner, once they have some familiarity with it, then yeah, the membership numbers drop significantly. We can see from a 32% down into, less than 10% by the time we get to ownership. So even looking at it from this perspective here, we would also come to the same conclusion that yeah, there's some association between club membership, snowmobile use, and looking at the numbers, I can then say what that association is. Now, the important thing to take away is, and this is going to be happening all throughout the course, is just because there is an association, it does not imply a direct link. Okay, you might if any of you have taken psychology, you might remember causation does not, sorry, correlation does not imply causation. And we're going to talk about that when we get into actually looking at lines of best fit. But this is kind of along the same vein. Just because we have an association, it does not imply a direct link. So it's not because I touch the snowmobile, I hate the environment. Like, it's not a direct link. Maybe there are other factors, mitigating circumstances in between those two that cause this association to occur. I cannot say that it's just because they're using a snowmobile that they are not a member of the environmental club. So like, if I eradicate all snowmobiles, like, these numbers will be gone and everybody's going to be in the environmental club. No, there might be other things at play. Okay, so that does it for this example. So again, if you like these videos, I have to keep mentioning this throughout the videos. Please hit a like at the bottom, subscribe to the channel, let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in class.